The USGA Green Section has been supporting golf course sustainability since 1920. Its work is built on 5 key pillars: research, education, course consulting, technology tools, and championship agronomy. Through these, they help superintendents improve playing conditions, reduce environmental impact, and cut maintenance costs, which makes the game better for everyone, from the pros to everyday players. What's going on, everybody? My name is Adam Kershane. You know me from Turf Today with Brian Laurent. And today we are hosting episode number 3 of Rolling with the USGA Green Section. And we are very fortunate this week. We have 2 awesome interviews. First, we have Ross Niewola, who talks about his article, Output Guided Inputs Drive Modern Efficiency. And then Mitch Leininger comes on and talks about key considerations for bunker health and playability. I'm telling you right now, 2 unbelievable interviews. These guys are both absolute studs. You're going to love them and you're going to learn a thing or two. Let's get into it. The first 2 episodes we did, people were writing in being like, we need points. How do we get points for this? Like, I learned so much. So,
Yeah. And I think it's new, but we're actually giving points now for all of our site visits, which I think
okay.
is awesome.
That's
So when we
that's
do
big.
come on property for anything, and half day versus full day does provide points, and we got asked the same question. They said, should guys get points? I said, we're talking turf and agronomy for 6 hours straight. I think they should get points.
You should get some points. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Go into yourself getting into turf and, finding your way to the USGA.
So I'm originally from Virginia. I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia, and I'm kind of the classic summer worker that never left, right? I was 18, I got a summer job on a golf course. I was pushing a mower in the parking lot, and just my local resort there in Williamsburg, and then later country club. But those early superintendents and assistants I worked with, they started inviting me to meetings, and I got to play golf for the first time. I think I played every day that summer. So I was
Nice.
shooting, 135s, and by the end of the summer, I was down to 105, and I just had the bug, right? I was all in, and so it really took off from there. And originally, I was studying business, and I was out in Colorado, and then I just totally switched gears. So I was that summer guy that never left, and fell in love with it. Ended up doing Penn State, the turf science program, and around 22, 23, I got a job at Pebble Beach, and I say I got lucky. They took a chance, right? They hired a guy across the country as an intern. And I just packed up and moved west. And really early on, I met a guy that had done a bunch of U.S. Opens as a director, and he gave me the advice to work in all the different regions. He said, if you really want to be an agronomist, which was my goal, then you need to do Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, Southwest, do a public, do a private, do big budget, small budget. And I was young, and I put everything in my Honda, and I just started doing it. So yeah, you do 3 or 4 years at Pebble, and then I get a job in Scottsdale, or I get a job in New Jersey, get a job in Palm Springs. I just moved around saying yes, spending 2 to 3 years all over the country, building the right resume to be an agronomist. And the USGA guys, they all go for life. They get a job and they stay there for 30 years. So to be honest, I never thought I would end up with the USGA, just because all those guys were 35-year, 30-year. They're there for so long. I just didn't think there'd be an opportunity. There's very limited opportunities. And then I'd spent about 4 years up in Washington, and the Northwest agronomist position opened up, and I'd spent my whole career on cool season grasses. And so it was just right fit, right time. I built the resume, and it became open, and everything really kind of fell into place. And it was a dream job, dream come true to get the agronomist position with the USGA.
So tell us about your position with the USGA and some of the things that you love about it.
Yeah, so I'm a consulting agronomist, and we do a lot of it's really 3 prongs. We do the course consulting service, where we're visiting golf courses, and providing that one-on-one consulting service, where we're looking at the course, and it gets specific to their needs, right? Every course has different needs. And the other prong is education. So education outreach, where we're doing seminars at GIS, or local, kind of GCSA stuff, giving presentations. We do a lot of that education outreach. And I've even done stuff just locally with golf courses when they're having out either groups of kids or even just groups of local like commissioners and I think it was business service committee members and things like that. So we do that education outreach, and then the third prong is the championships, which is everybody's favorite. Everybody knows that, but U.S. Opens, Women's Open, Seniors Open, but all the even the less televised, like the adaptive open and mid am and amateur events. And so we divide those up. There's, I believe, 9 agronomists right now. So all those championships are divided up and we kind of rotate through those depending on where they are in our region. And everybody has different things that they love about um, being an agronomist. For sure, the championships, a lot of guys love them, right? Championships, there's a ton of pageantry and they're seeing some of the best golfers in the world. It's awesome, everything that you get to see. I think for me, one of the coolest aspects has been the dissemination of information. So we're going to see 150, 200 courses in a year. And the amount of information that we get from all of those different visits. We have our own internal education where we're meeting with the professors at the universities and getting whatever's up to date education we need to have. But then there's so much you gain just from visiting so many different superintendents. Because as we know, there's a lot of superintendents that kind of figure things out or start experimenting with things. And it's awesome to be able to see what everybody's doing and talk to everybody and piece all of that together.
So I'm listening to you talk. I listen to Foreplay a lot. I don't know if you do, but you sound so much like Riggs. I don't know if you guys are
I
from the
get
same place, but you
I actually get that
do
all the
you?
time.
That's
And
so cool, man.
when I have a hat and sunglasses on with the beard, I look a lot like him. So I
Oh
get it
man.
a lot. I take it as a compliment. I like Greg. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I yeah, no, I totally I get it all the time. It's just funny. Yeah, so I think like 5 years ago somebody said that, and that's what got me to start checking out the Foreplay pod because I didn't know who he was, and people kept saying, "Do you know who Riggs is?"
Yeah, it's so good. I don't know if you guys are from the same place or something like that. You just have the same draw, but that's really cool. Okay, so let's dig into your article here. Output guided inputs drive modern efficiency. Free space here, so get into your article, talk about the things you want to talk about, hit on some of the important points and some of the advice you have for everybody out there.
I think it's just the at the core of it, it's a really exciting time. It's just a really exciting time in our industry because of some of the technological shifts, and that's really what a lot of this is talking about is how we've changed over the years. And superintendents have always been very meticulous record keepers. And I can look at scientific articles from the 1920s that are in how much nitrogen kilograms per hectare they're putting out in 1920 to 1950s. I can see how many pounds per 1,000 they're putting on different grass types and different, and all the way up to now. And it's all recorded. It's all in binders. You go to any old superintendent and he has a library of every year and he's recorded every single thing. And Excel finally gets invented in 1982, and then everybody's using spreadsheets to track everything. And now we have apps. There's all these different new apps for labor tracking and spray tracking and fertility tracking, and that's all inputs. Everything we're talking about is inputs. And that's all we really had to track. So you would track all your fertility or all your labor hours, your height of cut, the depth of the sand in the bunker, how much rain fell. All of those things are inputs. And that's all we could track. And now we see this shift where we can track outputs as well. The stimp meter was made in 1935, and that was kind of our only output measurement. And it was supposed to be for consistency, and then it became this measure of good, right? If your greens are a certain speed, then the club champion can say they're good or bad. But as far as measuring outputs, we just didn't have the tools to measure a lot of the outputs. And that leads to a lot of sentiment, right? And a lot of opinion where whether or not the golf course is performing or what is good or what is bad is a member comment card, right? A customer comment, a survey, whoever's the club champion at the time, whoever's the best golfer, or, is it, an older membership or a younger membership? It was a lot of opinion and sentiment. And now with this technological shift, we have so many new tools to track outputs. And that's everything from USGA GS3 ball, which we have gyroscopes now that are giving us trueness, smoothness, that rotational resistance that gives us speed. We can track firmness, moisture meters. That's an output, right? When we talk about how much rainfall came, that's an input. How much irrigation did you put out? That's an input. How much did the soil retain based on your infiltration percolation rates? How much is actually in the soil? That's more of the output. And then with all of that, though, we're tracking turf performance from a health point of view and golf performance, right? It's both things, clipping yield and that growth suppression and how things are responding to these inputs. And so it's just amazing. And it started with guys with spreadsheets and pencils. They were tracking it as best they could. And the tools are just finally catching up. And we have more and more tools that allow us to understand that relationship between the input and the output. So I just it's pulling levers where now these guys get to look at these levers that they're pulling, how much N, how much P, how much K, height of cut, how often I'm mowing, how often I'm rolling, all these different aspects, every lever that you can think of pulling, and see how it reflects in the output. How did that, I changed my top dressing. How did that affect the output of organic matter, right? And we're in the 2-4-6 method that we're testing. And we can get very specific and get very precise with, I went from 20.3 cubic feet per 1,000 per year to 25 cubic feet per 1,000 per year of top dressing sand. Exactly how did that change the trends in my organic matter? And how did that change my firmness? And how did that change my performance metrics for the golfer? And so it's exciting that we have more and more information, more and more tools at our fingertips for guys to play around and adjust these levers. And with that, there's also been this shift of understanding what you need on your golf course. It seemed like for a long time we were this runaway train of firmer, faster, firmer, faster, firmer, faster. Everybody wants to stimp 13 and have rock hard marble greens at every club in America. And it's just, can we be firmer? Can we be faster? And once we got this more consistent data, especially all these GS3 numbers we're getting now, we're finding that the average golf course prefers slightly slower and slightly softer, and for what they want. And we do that retroactively. You have a member guest event or a member event or big championship, and you get a bunch of feedback that says that was amazing. That event was just lights out perfect. We loved it. They were responsive and holding shots, but they were still smooth. That was amazing. So then you go backward and you look at all your metrics and you say, what was our firmness? What was our smoothness? What was our speed? And again, we overall, the trends seem to shift back a little bit. Nobody wants to be 14 and a half on the stimp when you're 80 years old nobody can hold those shots. So it's very cool just seeing us hone in on exactly what certain memberships want, and it's different for every course. But also understanding the inputs to get to those numbers and the diminishing returns on how often you have to mow, how often you have to roll. And sometimes you're not getting that benefit from that night mow and night roll, right? Or triple cutting in the morning. There was a lot of things we were kind of just doing to do because it was what was always done. And we'd seen it anecdotally work. Hey, we did this last year, we did it the year before, it works, we know we're going to do it. Now we're able to take a look and say, do we really need that extra double cut in the afternoon? Or do we really need to double cut and roll 7 days in a row if it only gains us 2 extra inches or 1 extra inch on the stamp, or if it doesn't really affect firmness, things like that. And what we found is just guys are able to achieve the same results that they want to achieve and need to achieve, but they're able to do a little bit less. You can skip a certain mow or skip a certain roll. And that applies to everything from those performance metrics to also turf health, where just clipping yield alone, monitoring that, which is fairly new, right, in the last 2 decades or so, you can skip a certain amount of mows if you're not seeing that canopy growth, or if you're suppressing so much with PGRs. And so it's just all of that is really interesting in the relationship of inputs and outputs, and how good guys are getting at manipulating those even at different times of year based on climate, weather, needs. It's just getting extremely said precise and methodical, and they got these programs dialed, and more information seems to be the winner, right? And so even organic matter testing, I have guys now that are testing all 18 greens at least once a year, but some guys are doing it twice a year. They want to do OM on all 18 greens so that they can do specific manipulation, not only course by course now, but hole by hole. And you can adjust your fertility for par three because it gets more traffic and ball marks, or do two passes with an aerifier because that green has higher OM, or increase the top dressing on a green that has higher OM. So all of this data and all of this measurement of outputs is leading to even adjusting how we do maintenance on a hole by hole basis to be more consistent across all 18, because we're measuring that output instead of that input. We could say, well, yeah, I mowed this one once, I mowed this one twice, and I mowed this one 3 times, but all the greens are stimping the same speed. And it's just, that's that relationship of input and output.
Yeah, that's so cool. Really well done. I wanted to ask you what you thought some of the obstacles were for adopting some of these programs and tools at different courses.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, it is more labor, right? If we say, hey, you need to start tracking all of this data, if you don't have the bodies, if you don't have the guys, it can be daunting, especially again, superintendents are they're hard workers. They want to do all 18 holes, they want to track everything. So it's always me trying to dial them back a little bit, say, hey, you don't have to get speed or firmness or clipping on every single green. You don't need this GS3 on all of them. And if you haven't done anything, let's start small. Can we just do the green next to your shop? Have your guy dump his buckets and then mow it, and then dump the clippings at the shop as he's driving by. Can we do 2 greens? Can we do a control like your putting green and then another green out on the course? But you start small, because the biggest hurdle it's the biggest hurdle for everything, right? It's labor, and can you get your guys to do it? The superintendents don't have time for it. They're already running ragged. So can you get your guys to buy in and adopt it and do it the right way? And can you find the guys that can do it? And so I always just say start small, start really, really small. If you just do 1 green or just one metric, let's start with that. And you'll find ways to kind of sneak it in. But any data is good data. And so again, if you can't do it every day, let's do it every other day, right? Or do it every Friday. Any data is going to be better than none. And we can kind of start small and build it. That's always the biggest hurdle, though, is actually, it's not the cost of any of the new tools. It's not, like I said, tracking or spreadsheets or applications. It's finding the time actually physically out on the course, because no superintendent and no assistant in this country has free time. Nobody has an hour in the middle of the day where they're saying, what should I do? What should I do right now? Maybe I'll take some data. No, they're already all running ragged. So how can we sneak this extra thing in? And I think we're going to see a change there, even just in the labor force. I've seen a couple guys that are hiring assistants, almost like a tech assistant, or somebody in college, let's say for the summer, that has no golf experience, they can't mow, and they're really just the computer guy. They're running the drones, they're running the applications, because there's a million pieces of data to collect. You can do payroll online now, right? You can do all your labor tracking, all your scheduling, there's so much that's done on the computer now. So I've actually seen guys just hire kind of college interns that are computer guys even, and they don't even go in the course and mow. It's just, I need you to operate all of the back end stuff. And I think you'll see a little bit more of that back end heavy skill set just in general, that younger guys, assistants that can fly drones and run all these new applications, whether it's, like I said, moisture, irrigation. I mean, some of the new irrigation systems on the iPads it's crazy what you can track and manipulate. So I think you're just going to see that back end skill set just get heavier and heavier, and that'll be another shift that we see. But those are certainly the biggest hurdles. I don't see any kind of monetary cost, or I really don't see that being a hurdle. Once guys start seeing the value of the data and how it's able to save them money in labor or inputs or fertility, everybody seems to want as many tools as they can get kind of once they cross that bridge.
So I love how you talk about the big shift, and I really want to know what you think about our industry 10 years from now. How's that going to look?
Yeah, it's so hard to predict, because I think like anything, even when we see it coming, those shifts tend to they happen very slowly and then kind of all at once. And I would use electric vehicles as a really good example. Electric cars and Tesla goes back to the mid 2000s, right? Like it was around as a company and things were happening. And there was always news about this new car company or this new electric or that. And it's this very slow shift. And then kind of all at once, you look around and there's just electric vehicles and a million car brands doing it. And same thing with any kind of new technology. It's very slow. It's coming, it's coming, coming, and it all happens at once. And I think that's what we're going to see with a lot of this new technology. And like I said, this kind of back end, what's capable of us. We're always the trickle down. Ag is the big brother. And so as they adopt things, it kind of trickles down to us. And I think everything with the autonomous is going to keep getting better. I see guys already. I was in New York 2 weeks ago, and the drone spraying that they're doing is really cool. And I know a lot of guys are experimenting with that, but I just think the future where a drone you can fill up your tank the night before, and automatically a drone takes off at 10 p.m. and sprays all your greens, and there's no one out there. I think that's going to happen. I think having mowers that you could set to go mow, especially specific areas, I think that's going to keep going forward. And it's the shift of just more autonomous and more computer backed. And that just goes with everything we're doing. Like I said, if you go back to 1975 and you look at what is on the computer, right, versus now, and that's a 50-year, 60-year kind of trend timeline. So it's going to take time, but I think we're just going to keep shifting toward anything that makes their jobs a little easier. And having something spray in the middle of the night or mow in the middle of the night is a big deal. I think everybody wants a automatic autonomous bunker raker. I think we're all
Mm-hmm.
desperate for one of those. But even the autonomous range pickers, I just think you're going to keep on shifting that direction. But there's so many other aspects that are really hard to predict. When we look at the last 5 years and golf and just how it's growing and the trend numbers and where those are at, I don't think anybody predicted just the demographics, where we're growing, the junior golfers, how fast it's growing, this bubble of golf in 2020 that isn't a bubble and it just keeps growing. So there's so much that's also really hard to predict. And more than anything, I think it's hard to predict the timeline, right? So we could say autonomous is certainly going to happen and drones are certainly going to happen. It's going to keep getting on this back end what we can do with technology. But does that happen in 2030 or 2040 or 2050? How long does it take to become affordable? But I think everybody should be aware that it is going to keep getting more affordable. And even like organic matter testing, not long ago, it was $2,500 per green to do an organic matter test. And I think now we're doing like $30 a green or something. Things are going to keep getting more affordable, both on the kind of testing and lab and science side, and then also on the technological side. With labor, obviously, just keeps getting more and more expensive.
Man, you're killing it right now. This is so good. The last thing I want to ask you, and then I'll let you go. With everything going on, or all the changes and everything happening with the game right now, what advice would you have for young superintendents kind of moving up?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Definitely putting you on the spot. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
ask you if you
certainly.
weren't doing so well. I feel like you got your finger on the pulse of the industry right now. So just, from your side of things, your view, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think just being open to all of that, and in the sense that it doesn't mean you have to adopt it at your club right now. You don't need autonomous right now or drones right now. You don't need it next week, but you should be hyper aware of what's happening. What does it cost? What do the permits look like? Do you need FAA in your state? Do you need a spray license to even hire the guy to come out? You should just be aware of all of those technological advances and what's happening and what's happening around. So, it worked well for me. So any young guy, I say be open, to different opportunities. I do believe when you try and plan too hard, you're going to miss out on some opportunities, just because there's so much out there and there's so many great guys doing so many great things all over the country, and just being open to that. The networking is so wonderful right now. Everybody talks to each other. Everybody shares everything online, from Twitter to Instagram and Facebook. It's so much information, and just being as open as you can. And even what we're doing right here, right? Just you guys, who knew there would be a turf podcast 20 years ago, right? It's just it's crazy what's out there for the information. And so I think it's just so important for young guys to be open to all of that. There isn't, I think in golf, a lot of times we can hide complacency behind tradition. It's very easy to be so traditional. And there's so much new stuff happening. It, like I said, doesn't mean you have to have it at your club right now. Could be a traditional club, could be you want to stick with how things are going, but you got to be at least open and see what's happening. Definitely keep your eyes open and keep learning it all, because you may want to implement it in the future and you don't want to be kind of behind the ball.
The other thing we try and tell people too is like the green section record is free. Like, why wouldn't you sign up for that and be able to read all that stuff and get all that information? Like, they're basically
Yeah, and
handing it to you. So like, why
I was
wouldn't
one of
you?
those guys that, yeah, as a super, I didn't read it. I really didn't. And now that I'm on the other side, I think it's so dumb. We actually make it for superintendents and assistants, even to copy and paste. Like we encourage, it's like, hey, no, copy a paragraph for your greens committee meeting or for your
Mhm.
newsletter or for your, like, it's right there to back you up, or not only provide information, but also back you up. Like, no, I do need to cut down this tree because look at the damage it's doing. And you can print that article out and take it right into the meeting with you. So there's a ton of information for them, but it's also great backing information to kind of help you move the needle with your membership or guests or owners. So yeah, it doesn't get as many views as it should. And these guys that have been with the USGA for a long time, and they write some awesome updates. And it's just, yeah, it's a travesty more people don't read it. So I think it's great. We even just, hey guys, go read it. Go
Yeah,
read it.
Ross, you killed this thing, man. You should have your own podcast. Maybe you do
Thanks
secretly
so
work
much.
for Barstool, eh?
Yeah, it's my alter ego.
Really well done.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. That was really enjoyable.
Would you like to sign up for the USGA Green Section record? Well, guess what? It's free and it comes out twice a month. Head to Turf Today, link in bio. We have our link tree there with a whole bunch of different links for different things that we do. The USGA Green Section record sign up sheet is there. So click on that link, get yourself in there. Like I said, it's free. Why not? Get 2 free articles every week to help you learn about the golf course. It's a no brainer. So head on over to Turf Today on Instagram, find our link tree, and sign up for the USGA Green Section record today. So what's going on with you? Where are you joining me from?
So I'm based in Orlando. So I'm here at my house, my office. So kind of centrally located in the Florida market. Born and raised from here, so this is home for me. Coming off a nice little trip to the Keys over the weekend, so I'm back to reality.
Yeah. That's how it goes sometimes. You need a vacation from the vacation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll just start with your background, getting into turf and, kind of working your way to the USGA.
Yeah, sure. So this is really kind of my second career. I started out right out of high school in the airline industry, working for Delta Airlines, and I did that for almost 12 years. Kind of started out on the ramp, loading bags on airplanes, and kind of worked my way up through the company. And the last few years, I worked in the operations tower, and so I kind of handled all different pieces of the operations, from the weight balance to the ramp locations to the ticketing to the gates to the crews to so all that kind of together in that kind of environment. So it was a really cool career. I loved aviation. I learned to fly privately on a Cessna 152.
No
So
way.
really loved being a part of that. But Delta, when they were merging with Northwest, were eliminating my department in Orlando. And so my options were kind of going to LAX out in LA or go to JFK Airport to work in the tower up there. Those were kind of areas I didn't really want to move to. So they offered me a good buyout package and I left. So I kind of went back to school. And then a few months later, started working at Bay Hill Club in Orlando. Just like working outdoors. I was really looking for something to kind of keep my insurance going, because my insurance is running out from Delta, and so just looking for something to get insurance. And a month into it, loved what I was doing. Loved, kind of had the same feel operationals that the Delta had in the airline industry, kind of the different mowers, the different heights of cut, the different things that you do on a golf course. I liked working outdoors. I liked the team environment, working with the crew. And so really, a month into it, I really liked what I was doing. I needed a new path for a career. And so I sat down with my superintendent. I was like, hey, I really like what I'm doing. What do I need to do to make this a career? And so Matt Beaver was my superintendent there. And he said, Penn State has a good online program that you can do while you're working here and do turf grass management. And so that's what I did. You know, hit the ground running, started doing that, worked at Bay Hill, did the tournament, the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I love that part of it. You know, again, working around the golf course, setting it up for a big event. And then later in 2009, we had the renovation there at Bay Hill. So I got to be a part of that renovation and redoing the greens and new bunkering and just regrassing a golf course. So within that first year, I had just a kind of whirlwind of turf grass management and kind of just taking it all in. I really enjoyed myself doing that. And so, yeah, I was hooked. And so from there, I moved on to a few years later to Shingle Creek, which is a resort property in Orlando. Heavy play, a lot of tournaments there as well. And so I was there for a little over 8 years. The last 3.5 years there as the superintendent, kind of got the bump up a month right before we renovated that golf course. And so my boss and mentor, Ricky Craig, left, and then I got the superintendent gig there, and then did a renovation there. And so again, it was feet on fire, a new experience there, and then becoming the superintendent there, and carrying it through and growing in a new golf course. So from there, went to the Villages, which is kind of one, if you're familiar with the Villages, it's a really big golf community, probably the biggest in the world, over 800 golf holes there. And so I worked on the government side, managing 45 executive golf courses there. And so in the Villages, it is a contract model. And so we have contract companies that do all the maintenance there. And so kind of oversaw those contracts and help the agronomy there and the planning and the renovations. And so through that process, I reached out to the USGA for some support as I was, asking boards for a lot of money to do renovations, and kind of oversight of all those contracts and trying to redo contracts and taking kind of some of the direct purchasing of fertilizer and chemicals and all that. And so I called the USGA and started working with Chris Neff. And he came in, we worked together, and it was kind of building that relationship together that I looked at the USGA and was like, wow, this is really cool. It's supporting team effort, looking to do things better on a golf course. And so it was that relationship that really kind of, when the opportunity came up with the USGA that they were looking for someone in the Southeast and the Florida region, I jumped on it. I thought, I want to be a part of this organization that is so big and so golf centric and supporting. And so that's how I made my way to the USGA from there.
It sounds like you guys have an amazing time over there. It's just such great people and obviously such a prestigious organization. So it sounds like he landed in a good spot.
Yeah, really, really happy. You're right. A lot of great people, a lot of smart minds to be able to feed off of, and a lot of good support. Again, all for the good game.
You recently wrote an article for the USGA Green section titled Key Considerations for Bunker Health and Playability.
Yeah, with bunkers, again, I kind of put in the article, it's really, I find it, second to the greens. Greens are our resume. Greens are where all of our effort, all of our money go to. It's what the golfers expect, good greens, but right behind it is bunkers. I mean, there's a lot of maintenance involved with bunkers. There's a lot of, visual aspects and aesthetics with bunkers, along with playability, right? There's a lot that has evolved with bunkers over the years, from just wind beaten down dunes back in the day, naturally occurring, to, strategically place bunkers, intellectually architects, trying to strategically put them, looking at yardages. So I think bunkers are, right behind greens in my firm belief that, there's got to be some maintenance and some thought involved with them. We can't just let them go and say, hey, the golfer gets in and the golfer's got to get out of them. There's, especially here in the Southeast and then Florida, where bunkers are beat down all summer long, rain season, heavy storms coming through, they take a beating. And so we're always having to go out there and take care of bunkers. So that's, part of the article is just based on that, kind of, my own, personal background of how, I always have to deal with bunkers. And then as I'm out in the field trying to support superintendents out there on golf courses too, just to put a thought to it and key things, considerations with bunkers. So kind of looking at the aspect of the turf around them. What do we have to do to try to keep, the turf healthy, protected? Sometimes we do wall-to-wall fertilizer wraps and we forget about it. We don't, we think we're done with them. But then, they take a beating not only from mechanical stress on our mowers and our fly mowers and all the weed edging that we do around bunkers, but also the players stepping in and out of them, hitting and out of them. So they certainly take, a beating, and we have to, protect the turf around them. And so that's kind of, what I was looking at to try to give just key insights on, not to forget to give that extra love to them, whether it's more fertility, spray applications, making sure we do insecticide applications on them, all those key things that, that turf around the bunker is going to get, used and abused, if you will. And so we have to, do those little extra, just like we do on the greens, we certainly do extra effort, extra spray applications to protect our greens. The same thing should go around the bunkers. And then looking inside the bunkers, part of being with the USGA is just a plethora of great resources, great articles, great featured articles, videos. And we have so much of that I try to include when I put my reports when I'm on golf courses, helping out superintendents and giving them avenues that they can do more research and look at too, as well as, just inside the bunker, whether it's bunker sand selection, drainage, liners, what do they need in their facility to be successful with bunkers, to be able to have a good playing surface for golfers, and the maintenance, what's more maintenance friendly for them, what's going to help out for them as well. So I know our Brian Whitlark, who is our regional director out west, did a great feature article on that. So I wanted to include that, all about bunker selection and testing and the different sand and particle size analysis and all the things that superintendents can use as resources as they're making decisions. A lot of the golf courses I go to are doing renovations, and so kind of one of the things I tell them is do a demo bunker. Build one to the specs that you want to use, to the sand you want to use, drainage, liner, and let it be a test model for your membership to play out of. Let them have a little bit of, foster a little buy-in and a little, personal feel how they like it, and based on the knowledge of the superintendent too, what he wants to do for maintenance-wise and what he thinks is going to work out. So I think that's a good thing to be able to do as far as the inside the bunker, what's involved inside. So those are kind of the aspects I try to put in the article to be able to try to, to help out. Again, it's evolving, right? Now bunkers have irrigation pop-up zones around them that are site-specific, and that's new from when I started, and even before I started, you didn't hear about that kind of stuff. And there's so much emphasis about, making sure moisture is properly put on bunkers instead of flooding the inside of the bunkers with just a turf head throwing into it or over it. And so there's, again, a lot of things with bunkers, I think, that are evolving, that maintenance there, specialized equipment now based on bunkers. When I started at Bay Hill, I was carrying 2 rakes, walking to the fairway bunker and raking out that way. And just the machinery now that we have for bunker maintenance is pretty unique and pretty amazing too as well. So again, bunkers are here. They're going to take the maintenance that we need to. And so I just wanted to try to give an article that might be able to help superintendents lead them down a path to think of different ways to be able to maintain bunkers, thought process, and then also if they're going to rebuild or renovate a bunker, key aspects to think about as well.
So what would be some tips that you would have for superintendents listening to this, going into a renovation or potentially, a big construction project?
Yeah, again, I think it's, working with vendors, looking at your different sand that you have available, what's the cost scenario, where are you bringing it, trucking it in from? That's all going to play a factor. And then again, getting that testing done for your particular property. What kind of, underlying soils do you have? Is it heavy soils? Is it sandy soils? How's the drainage going to work? Do you need drainage in there? Do you need liners in there? Is there, big rock material that might come back up that you have to think about? So those are all factors I think is site specific that superintendents might need to think about. Again, working with their vendors, what's the availability? How close are they going to be able to get the sand, and what kind of sand to use? Again, that's why I attached that article from Brian Whitlark, which is such a great article to be able to go through some of those site-specific things and testing as well.
How often do you think golf courses should be testing their sand?
I think when they renovate, that's when the initial testing needs to happen. I'm a big proponent about, having a line item, right? During construction, you're going to have a line item for bunkers. So same thing when you have a maintenance budget. Every year, you should have some kind of a line item there. And so bunkers are going to require that maintenance. I think that every few years, you should be excavating out that sand and putting new sand back in if you can, if your club's got the funds to be able to do that. But especially here in the Southeast, again, summertime, just getting beat wash down, sediment. There's so much aspects about that sand that gets beat up day in, day out here in the summertime in Florida. So that's, something I think is a big factor. That's if you can do it every 3 to 5 years, going in there and kind of shelling out old sand. It's good material that you can still use top dressing, whether it's tees, fairways, areas in your golf course. So you can reuse that material. But I think it's important, especially in the Southeast, if you can, to go through and put in some fresh sand every 3 to 5 years, and kind of a mini renovation, if you will. Check the drainage while you're in there, blow it out, make sure that it's working properly. Those are all things, again, I think that if you're looking at a time frame, it's 3 to 5 years on bunkers, especially here in the Southeast.
Interesting. Interesting. You were a superintendent, so I think you're the perfect person to ask about this. How do superintendents, educate leadership at the golf course or the golfers themselves about the difference between playability of a bunker compared to, just the visual aspect or the visual side of it? Because, there's always complaints about the bunkers, and it's the difference between the visual side of it and the actual playability. So how do you educate people about
Yeah,
that?
I think you take them out there and you do kind of a field day, if you will. Bring them out there and talk about those things. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion. One's gonna like the bunkers, and somebody else is not gonna like them. So I think it's a collective effort. If you can do kind of a field day in the field, bring them out there and talk about bunkers. One, how you maintain them on a daily basis and what's involved, so they understand the stresses that are put on maintenance teams with bunkers, especially after a rainy period. You get a 3-inch rain, that'd be an opportunity to bring them out and be like, here, this is what we would deal with. Because there's times, especially here in Florida, you go 5 days in a row where you're sending your maintenance guys out there every single day to redo bunkers, and it can beat down morale, let alone the asset itself. So I think those little field days where you can go out there and maybe take a group of leaders, whether it's from the membership or from your direct leadership from the club, that you can go out there and kind of talk about maintenance on them, and then playability. Let's hit some shots out of there. What do people like and what do people not like, and then adjust it from there and talk with them about it. I think communication is key. There's so many times where it's not communicated, or it's us versus them, and then, wherever you can kind of bridge that together to talk about playability. Because again, everyone thinks about aesthetics, right? You look off the tee, you see that it's strategically making you aim your shot somewhere, but then when you are in there, everything from bunkers too soft to bunkers too hard to, fried eggs, that all comes into conversation. I think that's a good time to do it together, talk about it, and what are the remedies and how do you go forward for everyone to be on the same page. I mean, I think I can tell you bunkers is a big topic, and I think people are renovating just bunkers sometimes. Maybe they're not doing a whole golf course, and their project is just about bunkers. And so I think it has its own special place in our industry now. Like I said, with the equipment, with the liners, the drainage, all the different companies are out there that are doing bunker work, the different kinds of sands. And so I think it's out there, and I think people are paying attention to the bunkers more, maybe more than we'd like to, but that's our reality now. And so I think I do see lots of bunkers, renovation talk, and then also, it's usually about the battle between architectural and maintenance, and trying to bridge that gap together. What looks good and what's going to be easy to maintain, what's your staff level, what's your budget. Those are all different things that come into factors, I think, that I hear and that I see. And that's why I try to include these articles and try to have these great resources that we have to help guide them along with those decision processes. And then if they can, have a demo bunker out there for membership, for players to play out of, to kind of get that buy-in and make sure everyone's on the same page and happy with that final product. But yeah, bunker projects are happening, even more so than total renovations, what I'm seeing right now.
So cool. Well, like you said, it's such an important part of our game and sometimes often overlooked. So it's great that people are putting more attention and money into them.
Absolutely. 6+ months now with the USGA, and it's really been, like I said, it's been a great opportunity, a great team. The green section being around research and being able to really, what stuck with me is, our CEO, Mike Wan, he talks about the USGA and that acronym to unify, showcase, govern, and advance the game. It's really kind of that S, that showcase. We showcase our superintendents, we showcase the best players in the world, we showcase these golf courses, but I would also throw support in there with that S, and that's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. We're kind of the agronomists or the boots on the ground, and we're trying to showcase and support superintendents and their golf courses and their needs, and kind of help with communication and whatever we can do. And that really drew to me, and that's what I really am happy and proud to be a part of with the USGA, is to be able to be out there on a day-to-day basis with other superintendents and kind of do that support and showcase part of it.
Huge thank you to Ross and Mitch for giving us some time. What a fantastic episode. Oh, like we said at the beginning, I think we need to figure out a way for you all to start getting some points for this, because we're learning and we're making strides and we are helping this industry. So tune in again next time for Rolling with the Green section here on Turf Today, recorded on the Superintendent Network. Take care, everyone.